Well, hey there, Internet people. Welcome back to Green Wing Gaming. It's Friday again, so that means it's time for another gameplay video. Today we are doing Scenario 2 of Mission 2, the Beacon Tower. If this is your first time on the channel, if this is the first video of mine you've seen, well, first of all, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. But you might want to go back and check out the earlier videos in this playthrough. Right now, at time of filming, they're the only gameplay videos on the channel, and if you're watching at a later date, they should be in a playlist. So you might want to go back and watch them in kind of narrative order, so that things will make a little more sense. Or if you don't care about the narrative, you're more than welcome to just keep watching here. If you're a returning viewer who's been watching the previous videos, again, welcome, and I'm so glad you're back. But for a quick recap, our last scenario, our ranger, Tywin Quickblade, and his merry band of helpers were dispatched on a mission to ascertain the fate of the Beacon Tower of Tor Varden, and we got ourselves into a little bit of trouble trying to cross a river at a bridge guarded by gnolls. Although, for those not familiar, gnolls are basically anthropomorphic hyena men, but for the purposes of gameplay, we've been using clan rats from Age of Sigmar. The mission was a bit of a rough one. Apparently, gnolls are very formidable opponents because it was very nearly a total party wipe. All but one of our companions were taken out of action. Our rogue kind of left us to die and just ran off the table, which sounds cold-blooded, but was actually for the betterment of the mission. Scored us an extra 15 victory points. But other than that, yeah, everyone was taken out of action except for our ranger, who managed to hang on with just a scrap of health left. But fortunately, the rules of this mission mean anyone that didn't die or suffer a permanent injury just goes back to full health for the next scenario, because it's now been a few days, and we've actually, in this next scenario, we've actually reached the Beacon Tower. So, we've more or less recovered our dignity from how close of a scrap that was. And we did manage to get across the bridge. Everyone was just conveniently knocked out. Don't ask too many questions. But yeah, with that, we have arrived at the Beacon Tower, and it'll be our ranger's job to try and clear the place out and retake it in the name of the king and all that. So I'm looking forward to it. I hope you guys are too. Before we jump into it, I would just like to remind you guys that I am just getting started on YouTube. If I'm sticking to my upload schedule, this should be the 8th upload on the channel, which means I've been at this for about a month. So anything you guys can do to help out the channel would mean the absolute world to me. Maybe just consider a quick like, a subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything. It's free, and it's a good way for you to make sure you get to see more of this content if you like this sort of thing. But yes, Algorithmo is a fickle god, and we must praise him. But with all these shameless self-promotion out of the way, let's just get into Rangers of Shadowdeep, shall we? And here we are in Scenario 2, Tor Varden, the lower level. So, we're going to start off real quick with the blurb here. After the encounter at the bridge, you and your companions were able to slip past a couple of other gnoll patrols and reach Tor Varden. There were no guards posted outside and very little indication of anyone inside. Then a muffled scream came from somewhere in the tower. It was a sign both good and ill. There is at least one man alive in Tor Varden, but you might already be too late to save him. You will need to move fast. So, pretty simple. We've arrived at our destination to find it almost certainly brimming with enemies, and we're going to have to figure out how to fight our way through it. But looking down here at the setup, this is actually going to be a bit of a different setup from last time, in that it's not really one cohesive board, but rather it's a series of 3 rooms that are meant to represent the bottom level of a watchtower, and they're set up in kind of an L shape here. And each room is supposed to be 1.5 by 1.5 and it's going on here about how many doors should be in each room. So basically the first 2 rooms should each have 2 doors, and the last one should just have the 1 door with some stairs in the corner. Looking here at special rules, stuff to be done before the game begins. Before the scenario begins, the player must choose one figure to make a stealth roll, target number 10, and a pick lock roll, again, target number 10. If either roll is failed, the players will suffer the quote-unquote penalty for room A, as explained below. They automatically suffer this penalty if the vulture managed to fly off the table in scenario 1. Now, we actually didn't encounter the vulture in scenario 1, so we haven't yet suffered the penalty. If we can make our rolls, we might be able to get into this tower undetected. If the players found the scroll in the previous scenario, they automatically pass the stealth roll. If they found the keys, they automatically pass the pick lock roll. We didn't find either of those things because instead we found the book of poems. So we officially found the worst possible result. Players should then select 4 figures and place them within 1 inch of the main door at the tower of room A. At the start of turn 2, the players can bring the rest of the figures within 1 inch of the door. Okay. So that is a lot of the basic setup. There's a couple other things over here. So here we have our actual table where we've built the outline of our 3 rooms. Now you'll notice we haven't actually put down any terrain, any obstacles or anything in the rooms, because the way this works is instead of event phase cards, we have 4 cards right here. Whenever we enter one of these rooms, we draw a card. That card corresponds to a different room in the bottom level. Now, obviously, this means with only 3 rooms and 4 cards, we don't know which combination of 3 rooms we're going to get. So, whenever we enter a room, we draw a card, and at that point, I'm going to have to cut the camera and set up the individual rooms, including the number of enemies. And so, basically, there is a version of each room that is the normal version or the penalty version. That pretty much just changes the type of enemies you're facing. It's meant to simulate whether or not you've reached these rooms undetected. So, for example, if the vulture from the first scenario that we ended up not encountering, if we had encountered it and it had arrived here before us, the tower would already be alerted to our approach, and the first room would automatically be the penalty version, or the harder version. And then, once we enter an individual room, we have a certain number of turns to get to the next room before the next room notices that we're here and starts attacking us. And we basically, they are able to prepare themselves for our attack. So the goal is going to be to try blaze our way through these rooms as fast as we possibly can, so that each room can be as easy as possible. But knowing how things went last time, I don't know how that's going to work. Now, right now, I have all 6 of our merry heroes piled up on the door. We're only going to be able to pick 5 of them, so we're just going to have Thaddeus and Archibald sit this one out for a little while. And so our heroes are going to be starting off in this room over here. But I'm going to come back in a second once I've got this all figured out, and we can start making... Well, actually, you know what? No. Let's go ahead and do the quick roll-offs to see if we've managed to enter that first room successfully. So we're going to pick our rogue here to be making our stealth roll and our lock-picking roll. So right here, the one good thing about this L setup is that it means that I have this nice handy-dandy square over here where I can pile all my dice and cards and whatnot. So that's been handy. But real quick, let's find out if we have successfully made our stealth roll. So she has a stealth of 5. The target number is 10, so we need 5 or better to pass this roll. Oh, and we start off strong with a natural 20, so we have passed our stealth roll. Now, that means we've managed to make our way up to the tower without being spotted, but have we managed to pick the lock? Let's find out. Another target number 10 with a lockpick of +5. No, we have failed. Oh dear, so we have failed to pick the lock on the door. Or our rogue obviously will eventually get the lock open, but she has done so in such a loud, non-stealthy fashion that the bad guys now know we're here. So that's less than ideal, but I'm sure we will adapt and overcome. And with that being said, with all that preliminary stuff, I will come back after we have set up the first room, and I'll let you guys see how this proceeds. And here we are at the top of turn 1, where for our first room we have drawn the red 3, which looking in the book is the armory. So we have set up a bit of an armory here. We've got some supply crates, some tables, we've got some archery targets set up, a few practice dummies, and of course our enemies. Now, you'll notice we have a little rack of weapons in the corner, which now that I think about it, we're just going to move out here, because there's no point in having them in the corner if you guys can't see them. So we have our rack of weapons up against the table, our archery targets, and our enemies. Now, you might remember this guy as the sergeant from the bridge guards. These are the models I'll be using for my Gnoll sergeants. They're on square bases to let you know that they're older and just better, because Warhammer Fantasy is better than Sigmar. So square bases better than round bases. In this case, sergeants better than fighters. If our rogue over here had been a little bit better at picking the locks on the doors, we would be dealing with 2 Gnoll fighters instead of sergeants, but unfortunately it is what it is. And we have a Gnoll archer right here in the center between the practice dummies, looking to switch it up for some live targets. But yeah, so we are at the top of turn 1, and having looked at the rules for the armory, we have until the end of turn 4 to get to that door, and if we don't succeed in that, we are also going to suffer the penalty in the next round, which will mean another set of harder targets, which would not be ideal. So, here we are at the top of turn 1. We're going to jump right into our ranger phase, and we're probably just going to jump straight into group activating with 2 of our companions. The good thing about all of these buddy boys being within an inch of the door is they're all close enough to group activate, although Tywin can only group activate with a maximum of 2. So he and Gwyneth are actually going to play it pretty conservatively. They're just going to jump up to either side of the door, trying to avoid getting shot by that archer. And we're going to have our swordsman Damien do the same thing. There's not any real need to measure it. They're all within 9 inches of that wall, so there we go. And that is our ranger phase, nice and quick. So we go into the creature phase. Now I'm not even real sure which ones are closest, so we're just gonna kind of go from left to right. Our Gnoll sergeant is just gonna, he can't actually see anybody, but they know we're here, so he's just gonna move his 9 inches, which is gonna get him straight to the door here. We're gonna do much the same with the archer, who's just gonna move. He's not gonna, his first move won't get him line of sight on anybody, so he's just gonna, again, do a double move and end up by the wall. So he's just going to run forward, looking to get as aggressive as possible. And again, similar thing over here. Our Gnoll sergeant is just going to move his 9. I really need to look into getting some measuring widgets. I suddenly understand why people use them. So 9 inches will get him to about there, not quite even with the archer because he's moving on a diagonal. But that is our creature phase done, as they've all had to just bum rush forward. And so in that case, we're just going to finish off turn 1 with our companion phase. We've only got one companion who hasn't activated. That is our tracker, Bryn. Bryn is just going to... it's kind of hard to tell what he wants to do. On the one hand, I'm not crazy about that sergeant closing in on our very squishy rogue. On the other hand, we do have a bunch of dudes coming this way right at us. But I think ultimately what we're going to do, we're going to try to deal with that sergeant, because if we do, Gwyneth has a beeline straight to that door, which could help us deal with us. Oh, it is also worth mentioning, we have a pair of clue markers in the corners, which, being the curious little so-and-so that I am, I'm almost certainly going to try to make a run for. So yeah, real quick, we're just going to have Bryn here shooting off a shot at the doorway towards that sergeant. So it's going to be his shoot of +2 against that sergeant's fight of +3. So this is already not great. I'm really wishing Gwyneth had done better on that lockpicking. Okay, it's actually worked out all right. So our baddies are, as usual, using the blue dice. So he gets a total of 14, but Bryn has rolled a 14, plus his 2 becomes a 16. Now, looking just down here, that is going to be a total of 5 points of damage, which is going to put him down to 7 wounds, if I can find the appropriate dice. Let me make sure. Yeah, he takes 5 points of damage, taking him down to 7 hit points. So he's taking a nice wounding hit, and I think Bryn is actually just going to stand. Is he going to stand there? No, we don't want these guys getting too spread out, because they're standing and reloading the whole damn game. Instead, we're going to have him move up to be within activation range of our ranger next turn, so that he can maybe get in another round of shots on that sergeant. So, that brings us to the end of turn 1. Not a whole lot happening other than the guards being absolutely waiting for us, and us desperately hiding behind a wall saying, "Go away, scary monsters." But with that brings us to the bottom of turn 1. I'll see you guys at the top of turn 2. And here we are at the start of turn 2. Let's give you guys a quick sweep of the board, remind you of how all of this shook out last turn. We've got a wounded Knoll Sergeant, if the camera wants to focus on him, there we go, who is trying to push that door to come deal with our rogue. Hopefully she can have some kind of answer to him, or maybe Bryn will just have to shoot him in the face again. We got our other Knoll Sergeant and our Knoll Archer coming around the corner, but fortunately, reinforcements have arrived in the form of off his base. We've got Thaddeus the Crow, the deadliest member of our party, coming to save the day, as well as our magic user who, I don't know, might actually achieve something this game. But we start off in the ranger phase as usual, so we are going to start by group activating again with Bryn and Damien. And I've mentioned in the past, you have to, the turn structure is a little weird. When you group activate, you have to do everyone's first action before anyone can take a second action. So we're going to have Bryn take his first action to reload that musket of his. I think Tywin's first action is going to be just to pop around the corner and get into base contact with the archer, because we don't feel like dealing with ranged attacks, or rather, I only want me to have ranged attacks, and then Damien is just going to hop around and do the exact same thing, trying his best to stay out of an inch of the sergeant. So that's everyone's first actions taken care of. And so second actions, we're going to have, well, let's start off with our boys in melee combat. Let's start off with Tywin, who's going to take his second action, to take a swing at this archer. So Tywin is currently fight +4, which is going to become fight +5, thanks to Damien giving him the gang up bonus, to the archer only being fight +1. So let's see if Tywin can bring this home. Okay. We have a 17 for Tywin and a 13 for the archer. So that is, that's going to be 17 + 5 is 22. He gains another +5 damage for getting above 20 on his total roll. The archer is armor 11, so that's 27 minus 11 is 16. Yeah, that's still going to be enough to delete this archer from existence. Which leaves Damien in a position to just... it would be his second move. He's actually probably going to... He's not going to back up, but he is going to move about... let's see where 3 inches gets us. Yeah, he's just going to move 3 inches this way, make himself no longer the closest to that sergeant, because I don't want him getting beat up just yet. And then we're gonna have Bryn here. Bryn is just gonna line up a shot on that wounded sergeant that he's already shot once. So this time I actually try to remember to get the dice roll on camera. So shoot 2 against fight +3. No, unfortunately, this shot does go wide. Unfortunate. Which means Gwyneth is about to have some problems. So we'll have to see how that goes. But that gets us to the end of the ranger phase. We hop right into the creature phase. We have to do the closest creature first, so he just charged... Well, actually, this is an interesting one, because from right here, where he was, he actually can't see Gwyneth. So, rules as written, he has to go towards the nearest enemy that he can see, which would actually be Damien. Because Damien made the mistake of getting closer to him, so by trying to have him avoid combat with a Null Sergeant, I put him into combat with a Null Sergeant, because I'm the smartest at this game. So yeah, it's going to be Damien's... I need to check his fight stat real quick. Bear with me, folks. I do apologize. Let's see if we can't make this quick. Man-at-Arms is fight +3. I've had his fight as +2 this whole time, so he's actually a fight +3. I've been getting that wrong. So it's going to be dice even, fight +3 to fight +3. So let's see how that works out. Oh dear. Oh no. So Damien, take the baddie's total score is 20. Damien has an armor of 12, so that's going to be 8 points of damage. He goes down to 4 health. That's not great. So Damien has taken a pretty nasty whack on the face. And then for our other remaining opponent, he's going to just run in real quick and charge Tywin. Tywin's going to be fight +4 to the Null's fight +3. Okay, so here we go. The baddie has rolled an 8, becomes an 11, but Tywin has rolled a 15, becomes a 19, so just shy of that crit bonus. And our Null Sergeant has an armor of 11, takes it down to 8 points of damage, so he is also going to be brought down to 4 wounds. Alrighty. So... Wow, actually, in the creature phase, we handed out exactly much damage as we took, so that works out kind of nice. But anyways, that actually finishes up the creature phase, because we managed to kill that archer. So we're just going to go ahead and hop into the companion phase, where Gwyneth is just going to move an inch over, and then 6 inches through into the room, so she's going to end up about there. And then her second action is just going to be to move another 3.5 into base contact with that treasure token in the corner. And so this is one of the weird things where the game changes how you interact with treasure markers or investigation markers in each scenario. In previous scenarios, it was said you had to actually give up an action. Here, you just have to end an action in base contact with a clue marker. I'm not real sure why the author of the book changes those rules from scenario to scenario, but he did. So, real quick, we're just going to roll a d20 to see what we get on the clue marker. 16. We have a beaten dog. You discover the watchtower's dog licking its wounds in the corner. The next time you take a hound companion of any type, it has a permanent +1 will. Huh. So when we come back at the start of next turn, I'm just going to put down a warhound on where that clue marker was. It doesn't say anything here about taking a dog for the rest of this scenario, but we just found a dog, and it's someone we can take with us, so I don't see why we shouldn't be able to have him with us. Also, we're going to need to remove that treasure marker, or clue marker. So I'll put the dog there at the start of the next turn. And we gotta finish out the turn, so we're just gonna have Thaddeus... I think we're gonna have Thaddeus wing around and come back up Damien over here. Do I want to do that? No, we're gonna have him come in and back up our ranger so that he can actually get that gang up bonus, and Thaddeus is in a little bit less danger of getting jumped on. And then our magic user is just going to go his full 9 inches, ending up right around here. He's going to be going for that other clue marker in the corner there. But yeah, that gets us to the end of turn 2. There's no event cards to draw, because like I said, we only draw cards when we discover a new room in this scenario. But yes, I will see you guys at the top of turn 3. At the top of turn 3, we've got kind of a dense collection of models here where the combat is ongoing. And we're just going to go ahead and start things off with our ranger. He's only in range to group activate with Thaddeus, the crow. So that's exactly what he's going to do. We're just going to have Tywin take his first action, taking a swing at this wounded Null Sergeant. He's going to be back up to fight +5, thanks to Thaddeus, the crow, being the absolute boss that he is, giving him the gang up bonus. So let's see, it's going to be fight +5 to fight +3. Interesting, so they've both scored a 13. Huh. There's a part of me that's very tempted to... yeah, actually I am going to use my once per game Hand of Fate reroll, see if we can't do a little bit better than this. I'm not so worried about the damage, because with his armor of 12, our ranger would only take 1 point of damage, but I'd really like to kill this sergeant so we can get on the move and not be so on the back foot. So yeah, we're going to Hand of Fate reroll that dice. There we go, and it pays off. So we've got a 14 becomes a 19, minus his armor of 11. His armor of 11 becomes 6 points of damage, and the sergeant goes down. So that is a dead Null Sergeant. That frees things up quite a bit. Thaddeus is gonna swing around for his first action, moving 9 inches. 9 inches should easily get him into base contact with our other wounded sergeant, and Tywin for his second action is going to do the same thing to try and help out our buddy Damien as much as possible. I'd really prefer to not take a casualty in this scenario, because unlike after the bridge guards, between this scenario and the third scenario, there's really not much in the way of healing. I think anyone who takes damage here gets like 4 wounds back for the next scenario, but if they're down, they're just down, and I don't get them in the next scenario for the upper level of the tower. So trying to preserve my guys as best I can. But that actually brings us to the end of our... Well, actually no, technically Thaddeus does have a second action. His only action so far has been to move. Do I want him to take the chance? Yeah, let's go ahead and go for it. So Thaddeus right now is going to be a fight +2 with his gang up bonus versus the fight +3 on the sergeant. God, I hope I don't get my crow killed here. Okay, it didn't go well, but it's not disastrous either. So Thaddeus has not rolled high enough. Even with his +2, it becomes a 10, but the sergeant has a +3, getting him to an 11. Fortunately, and for reasons I don't quite understand, Thaddeus has an armor of 14. He literally has the highest armor in the party. So his armor just absorbs the damage, and nothing particularly bad happens here. That finishes off our ranger phase, but I am going to go ahead and have the sergeant attack into Damien, because that's who he was attacking before, and again, rules as written, he should always be attacking Thaddeus, but it feels really weird to me that he was literally just in a pitched sword fight with Damien, and then suddenly decides to start swinging his spear at a crow. Yeah, so the Null is going to be fighting Thaddeus, he's going to be fighting Damien, the swordsman, our man-at-arms, who is going to be actually a fight +5 with his double gang-up bonus on the sergeant. So it's going to be a fight +5 to fight +3. Oh, and it's gone. Sorry, I didn't quite catch that on camera, guys, but we did get a 16 for Damien versus the Sergeant's 15. So, yeah, that's going to go up to a 21, which, because it's 20 or more, that gets the crit damage bonus. So that's going to be 26 points of damage, even with the 11 points of armor that this Sergeant has. He's going to suffer critical existence failure. So he dies in his own creature phase. To remove that wound marker. And with all that out of the way, that's actually the end of the creature phase. They got one action and died in their own turn. So that's going to take us to companion phase of turn 3. We're just going to have Bryn here reload his quote-unquote crossbow, which is definitely not a musket. And then he's just going to move his 7 inches for his second action, end up here next to Thaddeus. Over here, we're going to have our kooky old man move his 9 inches, which, if I can swing around and give you guys a little bit of better view of that, his 9 inches is actually going to be just enough to get him into base contact with that investigation marker. So, yeah, here we go with Archibald just yeeting himself across the room into contact with the clue marker. So let's roll up real quick what that's going to be. An 11. We've got the Captain's Log. You find a logbook kept by the captain of the tower. Cool. Don't really know what to do with that, but sure. And with that, we really just have Gwyneth and our new faithful doggy companion, who, again, I know the rules don't actually say anything about me getting a dog here, but I found the dog, so I want the dog. Call me a metagamer if you wish. But I choose to have doggo companions, and I apologize to no one. But our rogue is just going to go ahead and reach the door, which is good. It means we are going to get to the next, we are going to unlock whatever is in the next room without suffering the penalty, because we did it before the start of turn 4. We did it with barely any time to spare, but our fast-moving rogue has successfully avoided combat enough to actually make up for the whole lock-picking fiasco. So, coming over here, we have drawn the red 2, and so over here, red 2 is the torture room. The room is sparsely furnished with a few bunks, a table, and chairs, some of which are now broken. 2 badly beaten prisoners are shackled to the wall opposite the doorway. In the center of the room, place a Gnoll sergeant in contact with a soldier. The soldier is treated as one of the ranger's companions for the rest of the scenario. Use the stats for a man-at-arms, except he's unarmed, doesn't have a shield, and is reduced to 7 health. And we have 2 other Gnoll fighters in the room, one 3 inches away from the sergeant. The other 3 inches away from... Each of them is 3 inches away from the sergeant, but on opposite sides of him. And then there's a bunch here about what to do if you've suffered the penalty, but we didn't suffer the penalty. So that brings us to the end of turn 3. I'm going to go ahead and get the torture room set up. I'm not real sure how I'm going to manage that, but we'll see. And I will see you guys at the top of turn 4. At the top of turn 4, we pan around this now empty armory room, which we have successfully cleared out of gnolls. Our rogue has opened the door, and here we have the torture room. We have our 2 civilian prisoners being held up against these pillars. We have our captured soldier being held by a Gnoll sergeant and his 2 fighter companions. Just taking one last glance to make sure that we have... Oh, one thing to note about this room is that if the Gnoll sergeant is killed, we immediately place a clue marker where he stood. And apparently there are experience points to be had if we manage to rescue the prisoners. So the soldier here in the middle, the wounded soldier, if we can get to him and kill the gnolls, he joins our party for the rest of the mission, but the prisoners are too badly wounded to be of any use. They're just going to hang out, but we get experience points for saving them. But right now our party is a little overstretched, so we're going to be group activating with Damien, who I think might be the only one close enough. Yes, unfortunately, Damien is the only one close enough to group activate. Thaddeus is just a little bit out of range. So, panning out a little bit, we're going to have Damien move his 6. We're going to have him just do a double move up to the door, where he's going to hang out with his piddly 4 wounds. And we're going to have our Ranger Tywin, just kind of sprint up to the door and try to help out Gwyneth, keep her from getting bum rushed by a pack of gnolls. But that brings us to the end of the Ranger phase. And I guess the closest brings us to the creature phase, so I figure the closest is going to be this guy directly ahead of us, who is not close enough to get to us with a regular move, but he is close enough to get to Tywin with a double move. So he's just going to come in here and clog up the doorway. So you can kind of see he's ended up in base contact with Tywin over there. Let's see if we can't get a better angle. I could snap into base contact with Gwyneth. I'm going to choose not to and just trust that Tywin can handle himself. But coming back over here to our other enemies, fortunately, their buddy boy is blocking the way. So the sergeant is just going to run forward, double action move right there. He doesn't get into base with anybody. And looking over here, I'm pretty sure, yeah, just double checking with the tape measure. This guy is also just going to end up right here. We're just going to have him kind of come around like that. So we've got a little bit of a stacked up line of gnolls trying to clog us in the doorway. This is kind of a mixed bag, because on the one hand, it means my party isn't being attacked. I'm putting all of their attacks on my strongest character. It also means that I'm not making any progress. Sorry, I just forgot to remove this clue marker when Archibald discovered it. But yeah, so I opened this room at the bottom of turn 3, and so I only have until the end of turn 7 to get through this room, or I'm going to suffer a penalty in the final room. So I'm going to have to figure out a way to blast through these gnolls without it taking me forever to do so. So I'm going to need the dice to be somewhat kind to me on this one. We are going to go into our companion phase now, because the baddies are all busy stacking up on the door. We are just going to have our buddy, first thing we're going to do is have Thaddeus the Crow kind of come over here and just say, caw. We're going to have Gwyneth, we're just going to have her chuck a knife into the face of that Gnoll Sergeant. So she's got a shoot of +1. He's got a fight of +3, so I don't have high hopes for this, but we'll see. Let's see how this works out. Oh no, our rogue has rolled a 12, becomes a 13, which is respectable, except the baddie rolled an 18, becomes a 21, so her knife does absolute nothing, and then we're actually just going to have her, as counterintuitive as this seems, we're just going to have her back up, because she's actually currently offering cover to these gnolls from Bryn, who is now going to take his turn to try and shoot that gnoll in the face with his musket. Yeah, so he's just going to take a... He already took an action to reload in his last turn, so he's going to just fire off his shot. He's going to be shoot +2, do the gnoll's fight +3. So again, odds are not really in our favor here, but you never know. Well, actually, hold on. So our tracker has rolled a 9, becomes an 11, where the gnoll rolled a 1. Now, normally that wouldn't be too much cause for celebration, because, okay, that 9 gets bumped up to an 11, the gnoll is armor 11, so normally he would just absorb the damage. But because Bryn here is using the rules for a crossbow, crossbows do deal an extra 2 points of damage. So he has at least successfully caused 2 points of damage, taking our sergeant down to 10 health, which, I mean, it's not huge progress, but I'll take what I can get. And then his second action is just going to be to reload. And then we're just going to have the dog chill out over there. I don't particularly feel like getting him killed by running him into a bunch of gnolls. And we're going to have Archibald, don't mind me as I find my tape measure. We're just going to measure out 9 inches for Archibald. Yeah, well, he's going to end up kind of right there, just ahead of Gwyneth, but that is his double action, so he's not going to get to do much in this turn. Maybe he can liven things up for us next turn with a handily placed... Actually, what we're going to do is we're just going to have him end a little bit closer, so he's going to end up in group activation range, so he can do stuff with Tywin on his turn. But yeah, that brings us down to the end of turn 4. I'll see you guys at the top of turn 5. Alright, so turn 5, I gotta say, not ending these turns with an event phase is both a little, like, weirding me out, but it is really lowering my anxiety levels, because I no longer have that ominous drawing of the card at the end of every turn, so we just have to deal with the enemies ahead of us. But, again, not crazy about the situation I've ended myself in with this massive pile of gnolls waiting to just line up and duel my ranger over and over again. So we're actually going to group activate with Archibald, who is going to light off his first action by just throwing a fireball downrange and putting it, kind of exactly 3 inches behind these baddies so that Tywin's going to be just fine, but each of our baddies is going to be taking a +3 magic shooting attack. So we're going to start with the gnoll that's in combat with our ranger. It's going to be fight +2 to a magic shoot of +3. Okay, so Archibald has rolled pretty well for that first one. Rolls a 17 +3 becomes 20 for 25 points of damage, becomes an incredibly burnt rat. So, if nothing else, he has killed the gnoll we were actually in combat with. That's reassuring. But next we have to roll up the damage against... We're going to roll the damage against the sergeant this time. We'll just go kind of front to back. So here we have our dice, and again, this is going to be shoot +3 to fight +3. No, the sergeant apparently saw that fireball coming and got his shield up in time to not take any damage. But what about the back gnoll? How did he feel about it? Our buddy boy right here at the back, who's currently, I guess, patting his boss on the back, saying, "Good job deflecting that fireball." Oh, both of them, yeah. Apparently, buddy boy in the back here just like hid behind his boss. It's hot, boss. I don't like it. But that is Archibald's first action, was lighting off that fireball, which, okay, it didn't do as much damage as I was hoping, but it did free Tywin up to clear the doorway. He is just going to jump forward. He is going to have to stay kind of back to avoid getting that second gnoll into combat with him. But that is his first action. His second action is just going to be to fight the gnoll. To fight the sergeant specifically, sorry. So we've got a partially wounded sergeant in a sword fight with our ranger. So Tywin is fight +4 to the gnoll's fight +3. Okay, the gnoll has once again rolled a natural 1. Apparently the dice gods really want this sergeant in particular to die. They said, this guy is particularly abhorrent. Chop his head off, please. And Tywin seems to be happy to oblige. He's rolled a 16. With his +4 becomes a 20, just barely getting him the +5 damage bonus for a total of 25. Minus the gnoll's armor of 11, would get him down to 14 damage, which would literally be just enough to kill him, even if he were fresh-faced and uninjured. So that is our third sergeant dead. That is Tywin's second action. And for Archie's second action, we're just going to have him move his 6 inches, kind of yeeting past. Oh, actually, do I want to do that? Yeah, we'll just have him end up kind of like that, trying to keep him from getting charged by a gnoll. Get rid of that wound marker, it doesn't belong to anybody. But that gets us to the end of the ranger phase. Archibald was the only one who could group activate. And that brings us to the creature phase, where our gnoll fighter is going to charge the nearest player-controlled model. He's just going to come charging into the ranger who literally just killed his boss. So I really have to imagine that this Null, this little clan rat, is having himself a really bad day. That he's just watched one of his buddies get incinerated by a fireball. Through that fireball comes running Tywin, who just impales his boss with a sword. He's a braver rat than I am. I would not be looking to throw hands with Tywin right now. So our rat is going to initiate a melee combat. His fight +2 to Tywin's fight +4. And it has not worked out so great for him. Because Tywin has rolled a 15, becomes a 19, not quite enough to get him the crit bonus. But our rat has rolled a 4, which becomes a 6. So definitely enough to not go well for him. So 19 minus the rat's armor of 11 will put him down to 7 wounds. And we're going to go ahead and force him back an inch. Actually, there's no point, because the rat still has a second action. Oh, no, he 1 action moved, 1 action attacked. So yeah, he's just forced back an inch. And that's the creature phase. So on to the companion phase. We now have a bunch of stuff to do. So we're going to start off with Thaddeus, who's going to take his turn to just fly around, get into combat with the rat. He's just going to pass his second action. We're going to have our dog run around, do much the same thing. He's going to just single action move and then pass his second action. And then we're going to have our swordsman, our man-at-arms, Damien, come running through, looking to follow up on his boss's success and try not to die. So Damien here is ganging up with the animal companions, looking to throw hands on this with this clan rat. Man, again, this clan rat is just having a bad day. He's got sliced in the face by a sword by the guy who just killed his boss, and now he's getting just gang stomped out by Damien and Alvin and the Chipmunks, basically. So, Damien's going to be up to a fight of +5 with the double gang up from our animal friends. Fight 5 to fight +2. Jeez. Oh, dear. And the dice are being really kind to the party right now. Yeah, that's going to be a total damage of 30, so I'm pretty sure this clan rat just exploded. My god. I can't believe I was actually worried about whether or not I was going to get through that little blockade, because these rats, apparently, the gnolls at the bridge, man, they were way tougher than these guys. Apparently, they sent their best people out on guarding the bridge. But we are going to now just go to our rogue companion, Gwyneth, who's going to move kind of 3 to the door, another 4 out, and then another 3.5 for a double move towards our prisoners. So she's going to end up something like that. And she's making a bum rush for the prisoners. And I just realized I forgot. The Gnoll Sergeant, when he was killed by Tywin, would have left us a clue marker. And since we had a person in contact with that clue marker, we just automatically pick it up. So what's it going to be? A 10. Let's find out what a 10 is on the clue table. Is the captain's log. We already found that, so we're going to have to re-roll that. We've rolled another 10. Come on, buddy. There we roll a 3. 1 to a 3 is a filter of fairy dust. You find 1 dose of filter of fairy dust. This is actually a really good one. I actually know what this does. This is from the herbs and potions table. Basically, the way this works is at any point in a scenario, you can douse one of your weapons in the filter of fairy dust, and that weapon becomes magic for the rest of the scenario. So that is going to be really useful. Tywin is actually in possession of that filter of fairy dust. That's actually going to work out pretty good. Now, the distinction between magic weapons and non-magic weapons is there are certain enemies in the game that are resistant to non-magic damage. If you encounter like ghosts and spirits and stuff like that, they have a partial immunity, or in some cases a complete immunity to non-magic damage. So having the ability to suddenly make your sword magic for a scenario can be really useful. So yeah, we have successfully blasted through the gnolls. Last thing to do real quick is just have Bryn the Tracker move his double move of 10.5 through to end up right around Damien's damage marker. It's going to end up right there. And that brings us to the end of turn 5. We've cleared out 2 of our rooms. Hopefully this has demonstrated a little bit why it's good to not be taking the penalty, because you'll notice that first room took a solid 4 turns to clear out with 2 sergeants, 2 much tougher enemies, whereas this room, by getting to it without the penalty, much weaker enemies, blasted right through them. Part of that was also just multiple subsequent ridiculously high rolls, but you take my meaning. So we now have a clear line straight to the next room, straight to freeing these prisoners and getting another body on our side. But that brings us to the bottom of turn 5. Again, no event phase, which is doing wonders for my blood pressure. And I will see you guys at the top of turn 6. Alright, top of turn 6, guys. And things are looking pretty good for the party. We have cleared out our enemies completely, although we've forgotten to remove their wound marker. And here we are. We're starting at the top of the ranger phase. Again, Damien being the only one actually close enough to group activate. He is going to just... I know I have to do one action at a time, but there's no enemies here, so it doesn't really matter. Both of these guys, I think both of these guys are just going to double action, start moving towards the door. I don't really want to risk taking a penalty in the next room. So Damien's just going to end up like this. Tywin, if we measure out, he has a double move of 10.5 inches with his base move of 7. So he can really just, particularly in these smaller rooms, he can just bomb himself downrange really quick. So he's just going to end up actually sprinting past his wounded companion. Creature phase. Hey, that was quick. And moving on to the companion phase, we are just going to have Gwyneth move. It's going to take a double move for her, but she is going to get to the prisoners. I guess after the last game where she left us all for dead, she's trying to be a bit more noble and save the injured. We're going to have Archibald just kind of move up and get into base contact with this wounded soldier, who is now an active member of the party. If we can keep him, he's at 7 health, but if we can keep him alive until the end of the scenario, he will count as being armed with a hand weapon and shield. He'll basically go back to his normal stats. But yes, he is now part of the crew, part of the ship, part of the crew. So he's just gonna move an inch and then another 5, and he's just gonna double move to try and keep up with our ranger. Our dog is gonna run up to faithfully keep up with our ranger. Bryn, again with a light and fast 10.5 inch move, is just gonna get himself into a proper position to shoot whatever ends up being revealed in that doorway. And then Thaddeus is actually going to be the boss of this crew as usual. Fly himself across the room, getting to the door, no trouble, and activating what is in the next room. So let's come on over here to our card draw and find out what we're getting in the next room. We have drawn the red 4, so let's find out what that means, because I don't know. It is going to be, hold on guys, I've actually never gotten this result before. This is the Shaman's Workshop. I always end up getting like Ace 2 and 3. I've never drawn 4 on this scenario, so the Shaman's Workshop, whatever this room once was, has been completely transformed into a horrific workshop. The room contains some scattered furniture, all of it covered in animal parts. In the center of the room is a table with an inanimate flesh golem lying on top of it. Place a Null Shaman next to the table. Place 2 Null Fighters 3 inches away from the table, between the table and the door through which the heroes entered. If the Shaman is still alive at the end of the 3rd turn after the door to the room is opened, the Flesh Golem animates and is treated as a normal evil creature. If the players suffered the penalty, we did not suffer the penalty, and players have until the end of the 5th turn. So we would normally have 5 turns to get through this room. we now no longer have to worry about penalties because this is the last room on the floor. So now we basically just keep playing until the game's over, until we've killed everybody or made it to the stairs in the final room. So I'm going to get this Shaman's Workshop set up here, and I will see you guys at the top of turn 7. Alright, here we are at turn 7, and we have set up our Shaman's Workshop. We have a kind of arcane circle here with our crazed Skaven acolyte that we've set up as our shaman, with his flesh golem being set up here, and a pair of loyal helpers looking to keep us from stopping him. We've got this depressing little workshop set up with our experimental altars and piles of dead body parts and random crap that he needs to perform his horrible experiments. So one thing I'm really loving about using this mat from Table War is that the kind of stone floor design on the mat is really helping me. It makes it easier to sell off the whole idea that we're moving through a desolate stone tower. You end up not needing as much scatter terrain. You know, we've got some bookshelves and desks around, some chairs and scatter stuff, but really, with these walls, the walls, by the way, are from a company called GameMat.eu. They sell pre-painted terrain, which made things a lot easier for me. I didn't have to paint all this up. But I'm really been enjoying how much the terrain, the mat here and the walls make it so I don't have to spend as much time setting up a bunch of scatter terrain to really establish the atmosphere of what we're supposed to be doing here. But with that little note aside, we are staring into this horrifying little workshop scattered with body parts and animal remains as this kind of horrible Frankenstein's monster creature is being brought to life in some kind of horrific ritual. And the way this works is that if this buddy boy is alive at the end of the third turn after we've opened the door, the flesh golem will activate, and life is going to get a little harder for me at least, because now I'll have to look up what these stats are for a flesh golem, which I'd rather not do. So let's go ahead and just kill our friend the shaman. Shamans freak me out anyway. But yeah, so we're going to come over here where we're going to, at the top of the ranger phase, we are going to group activate with Damien and our dog companion, who I will have to come up with a name for eventually. But we're going to start with our ranger, who's just going to beat feet into the room. He's going to do his first action to make a 7-inch move into the room, charging right past Thaddeus, earning himself a not-so-thankful squawk in return. Damien is going to be close behind with his 6-inch first action move, which is just barely going to get him through the door with his 4 wounds. And then our doggy companion is just going to charge up being best boy. And then as for what's going to happen in our second actions, I actually don't know. Probably should have thought about that before I ran into the room, but oh well. Actually, Tywin does have a throwing knife. He's going to take a -1 penalty to his shooting for having run first, but I'm okay with that. So he's just going to throw his throwing knife at this little Skaven clan rat ahead of him. He's going to effectively be a shoot 0 because of the penalty for moving against the Null's fight of +2, so let's just see how this works out. Okay, I mean, he did successfully hit him, but he did exactly 11 damage, which is what his armor is, so the dagger does nothing. Fun stuff. And in that case, we're literally just going to have for their second actions, our buddies are just going to kind of cluster around Tywin. That brings us to the end of the ranger phase, brings us to the creature phase, where we start with the closest creature, which is this guy, who is just going to bum rush into Tywin, who threw a dagger at him, and he's going to get piled into by Damien. So that was kind of the reason that I clustered everyone around. That way, no matter what happens, Tywin is going to have someone to flank and back him up. And again, rules as written, the creature, You know what, let's just go with rules are written. I know he charged into Tywin, but rules say he should be fighting the enemy with the lowest health, which is Damien. So Damien is going to be normally fight +3, becomes fight +4 with Tywin giving him the gang up bonus. So fight +4 to fight +2 for the rat. So, the rat has actually won this fight, but not by enough to actually do any damage, because Damien has an armor of 12, and the rat has only rolled a total of a 9, a 7 with his +2. So nothing happens. They just kind of stand there. An evil creature will never drive back player-controlled models because they want to stay in combat. And then our other fighter is just going to run forward and do the same thing. He's going to charge Tywin, get piled into by the dog, and end up fighting the dog. The dog is actually not going to get a gang-up bonus, though, because Tywin is already engaged by another enemy model, so it gets a little complicated when we have these multi-model pile-ups like this. But basically, because Tywin was previously engaged by that rat, when this rat comes in, he's not able to back up the dog. So it's just going to be the dog's fight +0 to the rat's fight +2. Let's see how this works out. Okay. I mean, he didn't kill the rat, but he did win the fight. And if I look over here at the stats for our Skaven fighters, yeah, he's going to do exactly 1 point of damage, bringing our Skaven, our Null, down to 9 wounds, because they have a total of 10. And you know what? Just for the lulz, he's going to drive him back. So the rat came charging forward, looking to shove a spear in Tywin's gut, and got bit on the hand for his trouble. And that brings us over to our companion phase, where I believe what we're going to do is we're going to have Thaddeus yeet himself forward into this clan rat, see if he can't wrap this up. And his second action is going to be to fight. He's going to be fight +2 to fight +2, thanks to Damien and Tywin tying up the baddie. Come on, buddy. Okay, so that was a close run thing. The clan rat rolled an 18, which becomes a 20, which would have been the end of Thaddeus, if not for the fact that Thaddeus rolled a 20 and has a double gang-up bonus for 22. So he flies in, does 27 points of damage with the crit bonus, and bursts the head of a Null, proving that once again Thaddeus is the deadliest bird you ever saw. God, I love this crow. And then the next move, we're actually probably just going to have Bryn to dial up a shot. Oh, the question is, do I want him to shoot at the shaman, or do I want him to shoot at the Null fighter? Ooh, we're going to have him shoot at the shaman, because I don't feel like dealing with that golem and looking up his stats. So it's going to be Bryn's shoot of +2 against the shaman's fight of +1. Let's see how this works out. Oh, nope, the shaman ain't having it. The shaman rolls a 17, becomes an 18. Bryn only manages a 10. So, unfortunately, this guy saw that black powder weapon coming and just ducked it. So Bryn's second action is just going to be to reload, and then we're just going to have our rescued companion here move his 6 inches into contact with the... Actually, no, he's unarmed, so we're just going to have him stay here. You don't have a weapon, buddy, so just hang out. And then Gwyneth is literally just going to end up moving 10.5 inches, which is just barely going to get her to the door. And Archie kind of has to move around a table, so that takes 3 inches of movement. Another 3 gets him up next to Bryn. So his 6-inch movement gets him there, and he's going to fire off his other spell, his magic missile spell, into the shaman again. So this will be a magic shoot of +3. Now, you'll notice I've mentioned earlier that Tywin suffered a -1 penalty for moving and shooting. Magic attacks do not suffer that penalty. So he's not going to be taking a -1 for having moved before firing off his spell. So he's going to be firing his magic bolt spell, which is going to be a shoot +3 against the shaman's fight +1. So let's see how that works. Our shaman has rolled a 6 becomes a 7. But Archie rolled a 12, which becomes a 15. The Shaman has an armor of 10, so he takes 5 points of damage, which leaves him, I believe, I'll have to check his stats 1 sec, leaves him on 7 wounds. He takes 5, is down to 7. Man, I know this is a trivial detail, it doesn't matter to anyone but me. That is the 3rd enemy in a row that has been taken down to 7 wounds, to exactly 7 wounds. It's just weird to me that number keeps popping up. But anyways, things are looking okay. We have a wounded shaman. We've got 2 more turns to try and deal with him before we have to deal with this golem. And a wounded clan rat who has just lost his buddy. So we're going to have to see how this works out. But that brings us to the end of turn 7. Again, loving this no event phase thing. And I'll see you guys at turn 8. Alright, start of turn 8. This may well end up being our last turn if things go well enough. But we're going to jump right into the ranger phase. And we're going to group activate with Tywin, Damien, and our doggo. Doggo is just going to use his first action to get into base contact. Damien's going to do much the same, just kind of surrounding him, because the family that stabs together stays together. So Tywin is going to take his first action to go in. They are now getting ready to mega gang stomp this rat into the next universe. And yeah, we're going to have Tywin take his second action, and it's going to be fight +6 to the rat's fight +2. And no, I don't feel even a little bit bad about it. Okay, so he rolls an 11. Our rat has rolled a 3, so the rat definitely loses. But the 11 + 6 becomes a 17, becomes 5 points of damage, which is going to take him down from 9 health down to 4. So still not quite enough to kill him, but that's okay. We're going to have Damien take a swing. Damien, with his double gang up bonus, is going to be a fight +5 to fight +2. Okay, the rat is not rolling well. The rat has rolled a 3 and then a 1. Damien has rolled a 12. With his double gang up bonus, he is a +5, so that becomes 17. It's going to be 6 points of damage. That is finally going to kill off our clan rat, leaving our doggo free to just kind of take a second move forward and end up like this. Gonna get rid of that wound marker. Creature phase, I suppose the shaman's just gonna run forward and try to hit a dog. Fight +1 to the dog's fight +0. Okay, so I mean, the creature did win with a total of 7, but he hasn't actually caused any damage because doggo has an armor of 12. Because he is a faithful warhound. Serves you right for trying to kick a dog. But that brings us to the end of the creature phase, because he's the only creature left standing. So right on to our companion phase. Once again, bird and dog are teaming up. Thaddeus saying, hey, get away from my new buddy. Is going to take 1 action to move in, and another action to fight. And this will be dice even, thanks to our gang up bonus. Okay, Thaddeus does end up doing some damage. With a total of 12, he does 2 points of damage, taking the shaman down to 5 wounds. Let's see if anyone else can get in on the action. We're going to have Gwyneth. Oh, her 7 inches does not quite get her there. So she's just going to head over like that. Our unarmed friend is just going to huddle behind the rest of the good guys. I'm really trying to keep him alive so that he can be more useful in the next scenario. And Bryn can no longer take shots because we have friends in combat. And if you try to shoot into combat, you have to randomize who gets hit, and I don't want to risk him shooting Thaddeus or the dog. So he's just going to double action move that's going to end up right over there. So our buddy Bryn just kind of runs himself into the room. Archie's going to do much the same. Not a lot he can do here. He's just going to kind of end up there. That brings us to the end of turn 8. You know what? We're not even going to break for this. We're just going to jump right into turn 9. We can finish this up right now if we play our cards right. So we're just going to jump into the ranger phase. We're going to group activate with Damien, Damien's just going to come around like this to jump on the back of our nefarious shaman. Tywin's going to yeet himself forward, bravely gang stomping this Gnoll nerd. With a triple gang up bonus, he is now a fight +7 against the Gnoll's fight +1. So I'm liking his odds, and apparently he needed every inch of that, because the Gnoll rolls a 13, becomes a 14. Our Ranger rolls an 8, +7 becomes a 15. So he literally just barely beats out the Shaman's roll. But 15 minus his armor of 10 is exactly 5. He does exactly enough damage to kill the Shaman with just one turn left before he would have activated the Flesh Golem. So this Frankenstein monster just kind of, the light dimly fades from his eyes as his master is slain before him, and the Flesh Golem just kind of collapses back into his component bits. But with that being said, we have now cleared all 3 rooms of the lower level of the tower, which means mission success. We win. The stairs up to the next level are right there. And, yeah, that is the end of the scenario. I will come back to you guys after we've tallied up experience, and we can start getting ready for leveling up and hopefully move on to the upper level of the tower. Alright, now we have the squad all stanced up around the Flesh Golem that they have successfully prevented from activating. This has been a very successful mission, the opposite of what happened last time. We have had a complete party success, taking barely any damage. We've actually scored a total of 60 experience points for our actions in this scenario, which took our Ranger up to 314 experience. He has achieved level 3, and for his level 3 level up, he gets an additional 10 recruitment points, which puts him now at 110 recruitment points plus his leadership of 5 for a total of 115. So we'll have to see what he can do with that. I don't think that's going to add any members to the party, but it does mean we can spend some recruitment points getting Archibald a 3rd spell. So we'll have to see what that looks like in the next scenario. But as far as our damage, the only person who took any damage was Damien, and the scenario specifically says that anyone who has successfully survived to the end of the scenario regains 8 health points before the next one, which is exactly how many hit points he took. So he's back up to full health. And yeah, that's about it. The only kind of negative is that to get that 60 experience points, freeing the prisoners over here in the torture room inherently gets us 10, but that can get bumped up to 20 if we leave one of our companions here and they don't get to participate in the next scenario. So I'm just going to have Gwyneth, who freed the prisoners, we're just going to have her stick around, because honestly, I don't think a rogue is going to be super helpful in the next scenario. And yeah, that brings us to the end of it. Gwyneth is going to be sitting it out. Damien's back up to full health. Tywin has gained more recruitment points, which somehow means Archibald is going to get himself a new spell. And yeah, that is about it for this scenario. We have cleared out the bottom level of Tor Varden. We have to climb to the top to stop whatever nefarious plans the forces of the Shadowdeep have for this place. But that'll be coming next week, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in the outro. And there we have it, folks. We have finished our 4th scenario in this Rangers of Shadowdeep campaign. This one went a little better than the last one, which should just show you how wildly a D20 system can swing. We actually didn't lose anyone out of action. The one guy who took any wounds gets to heal up to full before our next scenario, because he lost exactly enough to take no permanent damage. We managed to rescue a captured soldier and recruit his loyal hound to our cause, so those 2 will be following us into the next scenario. More importantly, we have our merry band of heroes have successfully cleared out the lower level of the watchtower, making us one step closer to stopping whatever this nefarious plan is, and I'm sure we'll find that out in the next scenario, because the next scenario is actually the conclusion of the mission. So, looking forward to playing through that. I hope you guys are too. Other than that, we did manage to level up our character, get a few more recruitment points. I don't think we're going to be able to level up again in the next scenario, because we ended up at, like, I think it was like 320 experience points, so we would have to get, like, 80 experience points in the final scenario of the mission. I don't think that's going to happen. Maybe I'm wrong, but we'll find out next week. I hope to see you guys over there, because I hope you're enjoying the campaign so far. And, yeah, with all that out of the way, I'm just going to remind you guys one more time that if you enjoyed this content, I would really appreciate if you could maybe consider giving it a like, maybe consider subscribing if you want to see how the rest of the campaign plays out. Although, all of that does genuinely help the channel get viewed by the algorithm, but if I'm being honest, if you've made it this far in the video, you've already helped me get seen by the algorithm, so I do appreciate it. It really helps me out when I'm just getting started this way. But, yeah, if you have any further thoughts on the campaign, I'd love to hear them down below in the comments. I would love to see you guys over on some of the other videos on the channel, but in the meantime, happy wargaming.
Onward to glory!